When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die. Unfortunately, when the epic HBO fantasy series drew to a close in 2019, it was the hopes of fans which died horrifically. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. While it is impossible to satisfy everyone when tying off so many plot threads and when dealing with stakes so high, predominantly Game of Thrones fans were displeased with the outcome. A show which had once boasted great world building, organic character development, and sharp dialogue had fallen victim to a rushed pace and plot-convenient devices. The internal logic driving the beloved show fell apart, which has led to the questions of what should have happened and who would have really been the best ruler for Westeros.
I like to think my experience has led to some small skill in statecraft and an understanding.
Please sit.
The ultimate decision of the show, that Bran Stark was elected king by the heads of the noble houses, was greeted with mixed reactions.
All hail Bran the Broken!
He is wise, literally all-knowing, and due to the fact that he cannot have children, the system of hereditary rule of the newly formed Six Kingdoms is diverted. However, some people have pointed out exactly how problematic this all is. As a young king, he will outlive his councillors and likely everyone else who was at the first election. And without accountability, the odds that the next king or queen elected will just toss the whole election method out is high.
Long may he reign.
Long may he reign.
Long may he reign.
Long may he reign.
That will improve.
I'm sure it will.
Furthermore, his power is terrifyingly consequential. Although he is something of the personification of the history of Westeros and meant to be seen as the ultimate neutral good, his moral ambivalence as the three-eyed raven, coupled with his ability to enter anyone or anything and control their actions, is kind of a villain-esque thing to have in a leader.
Perhaps I can find him. Do carry on with the rest.
A darker ending still would have seen the victory of the Night King, and honestly, without Arya, this might have been the most organic outcome. His motivations were sadly never fleshed out, but his end goal was always clear: kill the living, control the dead. Even if most people seemed happy with the method by which and by whom he was dispatched, the sudden demise of the show's heaviest hitter was a shock to most viewers. A greater shock, and perhaps what could have been the greatest twist of all, was left unexplored. No throne, no leader. The Seven Kingdoms all going their own separate ways with an appointed king or queen in each, but for a world so used to the born rule of a high king, that might have been a hard pitch. With claims to the throne in mind, however, Gendry showed real promise, and for some, was the ideal choice.
The bastard of Robert of the House Baratheon. First of his name, King of the Andals and the First Men. Why do you think the Gold Cloaks wanted you?
As King Robert Baratheon's only surviving legitimate son, he had a real claim to the succession of kings, as it was known. Not only that, but having grown up amongst the common people of King's Landing, he not only understood the capital, but the people he would be ruling.
I don't know much about swinging swords, but this I know.
Hardworking, brave, and loyal, Gendry Baratheon would have been a worthy choice. His one failing is his lack of knowledge of court politics and the interactions between the noble houses. This lack of understanding of subterfuge and secrets might have done him in quickly. Hey, just because Varys got toasted doesn't mean that the little birds aren't still flying.
Come in. And? Nothing.
One person who might understand such things is Sansa Stark. The Lady of Winterfell had perhaps one of the larger character arcs of the entire series. In the beginning, a naive young girl, by and by a pawn, and finally a confident and astute young woman. With her understanding of the other nobles, their histories, and with a keen knack for survival, she could truly play the Game of Thrones better than some.
Thank you for all your many lessons, Lord Baelish. I will never forget them.
There is, however, the small matter of her claim to the throne. While she is a decent choice for Queen in the north, when it comes to ruling the Seven Kingdoms, she has little right. She has also proven to be selfish, impetuous, a breaker of trust, and essentially the catalyst for Daenerys' heel turn, as well as Jon's eventual incarceration. But if a smart and savvy ruler is what you were hoping for, you were likely rooting for Tyrion Lannister. In truth, he is not a flawless choice. When hand to Queen Daenerys, an ambitious and competent queen, he was unable to see beyond his own biases and was therefore unable to give sound advice.
So bring the dead to her.
However, when acting hand to the cruel and inept King Joffrey, he was given more or less a carte blanche when it came to making brilliant plans. His political savvy helped him to position allies around himself, and his planning and battle strategies for the Battle of Blackwater likely saved King's Landing.
Those are brave men knocking at our door. Let's go kill them!
So, as a king and able to choose roads for himself, he might have actually been great. Getting him to that point would be the trick. With zero clear avenues for succession, it would require him to basically be the last man standing. Despite the fan theories that he was secretly a Targaryen, this point was never confirmed. Although, should it have been true, that would mean that Tyrion was Dany's eldest brother, even older than the deceased Prince Rhaegar, and therefore the true heir to the Iron Throne, which undoubtedly would have been a hard concept for Daenerys to take, and with due cause. After the death of her brother Viserys, Daenerys was the last known Targaryen, a family which stemmed from ancient Valyria and had dragon's blood running through their veins. As the last Targaryen, she was hounded by assassins for years and grew up in poverty. She worked hard her entire life to take back what was violently taken from her family. On her journey, she learned several languages, more about the wider world, how to unite divided factions, and the means of just rule. Not only did she have for the longest time the only legitimate claim to the throne, but she used that time to actively learn about diplomacy and good governance. Having lived on the street herself, she had compassion for the poor and destitute, and always fought for the people and against tyrants. Plus, she had the strongest, most loyal forces behind her, as well as 3 bloody dragons. All she had to do was keep doing as she had been. There was no need for her to go Mad Queen, and many fans agreed that her sudden snap felt entirely forced upon by the writers. Despite the later insistence that she was going mad all along, when looked at objectively, she was no more ruthless than anyone else. She used a dragon instead of a sword in sentencing people to death, so what? And she always gave her opponents the option to kneel first.
Burning the Tarleys, for instance.
That was not impulsive. That was necessary.
But what would a Westeros under Queen Dany look like? Her underlying message and goal was always to break the wheel. She would have ideally stepped aside, either right away or after a brief period of rule and getting the country back in order. As she cannot have children, hereditary rule would not be an option, just as it was in the election of Bran. Had she not been killed off, there was certainly someone else who would have been popular for candidacy and election, especially from Daenerys, who throughout valued loyalty and rewarded it.
Avitolvio and Neurogento Sibrosan. Dario Valerio Valeriat.
To begin with, Jon Snow is a fan favourite, but let's be honest, he's also the fail-up king of the show.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
He wasn't particularly good at the Night's Watch, getting captured on his first mission beyond the wall. He beheaded the first person to refuse a direct and not all that important command while he was the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, thereby sowing distrust in all his men but his immediate friends, resulting in his assassination. And while the Battle of the Bastards was a fine moment for him, it was the Knights of the Vale who saved his bacon. When he was sent to parley with the Dragon Queen, he almost immediately betrayed the will of the North by joining Dany. And then, despite his insistence over and over and over that she was his queen, he murdered her because he thought she'd gone too far after one bad day, despite her years-long track record for justice and all she sacrificed to help him and his fight against the Night King. So, how might he have become a king? If you pretend for a minute that he did not kill Daenerys, because let's be honest, it was all over for him after that happened, Grey Worm and the Unsullied never would have allowed it, it all could have been lined up for him. As a true wheel and rule breaker, Dany may not have wanted to stick around Westeros anyway. After all, she had nothing but trouble since landing in the Seven Kingdoms. She did much the same, leaving Daario Naharis in charge of Meereen.
There's finally peace in Meereen. You will keep the peace while the people choose their own leaders.
With her conquering spirit and unwavering sense of justice, Queen Daenerys of Westeros might have taken her dragons and armies to travel the world, taking down tyrants and freeing innocent people everywhere. In her absence, she would have entrusted the care of Westeros to her own nephew, Aegon Targaryen, aka Jon Snow.
We do it together. We break the wheel together.
This manner of ascension for Jon Snow would have been in many ways ideal. Despite being Prince Rhaegar's son, it is unlikely that Jon would have pressed this point. However, that claim would have been a great card to play should his rule have been questioned. Stepping on no one's toes, a hero of Westeros, and with the backing of Daenerys after they had together successfully defeated the Night King and freed King's Landing, no one would have complained. Jon's strongest assets, his compassion and unwavering sense of honor and decency, tempered by his total lack of desire to be king, could have made him a great ruler.
I don't want it. I never have.
A similar feat could have been achieved had they married. Their co-rule, though gross despite Targaryen traditions, would have literally been the marriage of ice and fire. Had things played out like this, Jon Snow would have been a natural choice for King of Westeros.
You are my queen. Now and always.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo UK and subscribe for more great content.